Okay, we're not going to do a new concept for today. We're just going to go through the remainder of these examples on the Maf'ul Mutlaq, and then we'll do Hal next week, inshallah. So, just going through the examples. Last week we went through up until number 5. Right? And all of these were now a little bit of slightly more advanced. I think you see the problem with Maf'ul Mutlaq is this, right? When you look in the Quran for examples, most of the examples of a Maf'ul Mutlaq in the Quran are higher order examples. Most of them, right? Of the examples of Maf'ul Mutlaq are not straightforward in that have a fi'l with a set of root letters and then its exact masdar in nasb, right? Either with a number or a sifa. That's the basic one. We had Maf'ul Mutlaq, and we said it comes for 3 reasons: either emphasis, clarifying number, clarifying type. And we said when it's for emphasis, the masdar comes on its own. When it's clarifying number, it just comes either as with a sifa, like darban wahidan, or darban thalathan, or darbatain, or like that, right? It comes with a number, or it comes with a sifa to clarify type. Right? That's the basic 3 way. Then last week we added the idea that at times a masdar in nasb is found in a verb or in a sentence in a replacement of the verb. Right? How do we know that it's in replacement of a verb even if it's right at the beginning? Because it's in nasb. Because it's in nasb. We can see that it's not. If it weren't a replacement for a verb, if it were just that word there, it would have to be in raf as the mubtada or the khabar. Right? Like, for example, like when we had nakasibaghat Allah. Right? And if we look at, for example, لا تعبدون إلا الله وبالوالدين إحسانا. The sentence that we have here is actually just this: وبالوالدين إحسانا. Right? We don't have to consider ourselves really with the first part. لا تعبدون إلا الله. The sentence is وبالوالدين إحسانا. بالوالدين is what? حرف الجر. والدين اسم المجرور at the beginning of a sentence. The sentence is وبالوالدين إحسانا. Now, if we have a harf al-jar and ism majroor at the beginning of a sentence, we're still looking for what? The mubtada. But what's the rest of the sentence? Ihsanan. And you can see that it's in nasb, it's not in raf. Right? Not ihsanun. That's ihsanan. Now I need to ask myself, what on earth is going on there? What is going on there? There's no mubtada here. But there has to be a mubtada if it's a nominal sentence. Or there has to be a fi'l if it's a verbal sentence. For me to have a verbal sentence. But yeah, what we have is, we have a word that is in halatul nasb. I'm telling you, what you assume that to be. You assume that to be a maf'ul mutlaq. What do I understand from that? I understand from that I have this masdar, but the masdar is there actually in place of the verb. وَبِالْوَالِدَيْنِ أَحْسِنْ. And to your parents, do good. Understand? To your parents, do good. Do good is an amr. It's a fi'al. Fi'al al-amr. That word ihsanan is coming in replacement of it. So how else should I translate? To make a complete sentence. The Quran does not have random words. Okay, and you could say, and with his parents, he was good. Or you are being good, or whatever. Why am I translating it as that one specifically? Because the reason I'm translating it as that amr specifically is because of the context. Right? What do I mean thereby? We're not speaking about he or you or she in this verb. No, Allah is giving commands, broad commands. Right? And I'm translating it like that because it is an appropriate translation. It is an interpretation. No. Oh yes. depends how you want to make it Arab of it. How to make it Arab of this? Yeah, but you see what might be said is this: that there is an invisible verbal. It is an invisible verbal. Right? Yeah. No. No. Okay. No. So you see, where it actually matters in terms of whether it's a verbal sentence or a nominal sentence is in terms of how we make i'rab of the sentence. Right? So how do i'rab get made of the sentence? So again, if we're going to understand the word ihsanan as ahsin, then yes, I'm going to read to you the i'rab of the sentence, and then we can understand from there. So وبالوالدين الواو عاطفة الباء حرف جر الوالدين اسم مجرور بالياء والجار والمجرور متعلقان بالفعل المحذوف. So you say this بالوالدين, it's حرف الجر and it's اسم المجرور, right? They come to clarify, or they come connected to a verb, but the verb is omitted, right? But obviously, if the verb is omitted, then there has to be something in the sentence that indicates to me that the verb is omitted. Right? So what indicates to me that the verb is omitted? That word ihsana. So he said they are connected to the verb that is omitted, which is ahsinu. Right? And then they say maf'ulun mutlaq. Ihsanan is maf'ul mutlaq li fi'lin mahdhuf. So what happens here is, right, that this, in terms of form, we don't see any verb. So you may think that it's a nominal sentence, right? But it's actually a verbal sentence in that everything in the sentence centers around that verb that's absent, or that's mahdhuf, but indicated to by ihsan. So nowhere in the i'rab of the sentence will I find a mubtada and a khabar. I will find a harf al-jar and ism majroor. Is that now khabar muqaddam? No, it's not a khabar muqaddam. There's no khabar in the sentence. It is something, it's a parenthesis connected to an omitted verb. Ihsanan, it's a maf'ul mutlaq. For what? For a verb that is omitted. So there's no mubtada, there's no khabar in this. So it's actually a jumla fi'aliyya that centers around an omitted verb. Right? But don't bother yourself with it. It's not going to affect your understanding in any way. What it does is, I mean, why it is important to know that is it might help you with interpretation, and also it guides you in terms of how to make i'rab of the sentence. Right? But if you can make i'rab of the sentence without categorizing the sentence itself, that's also fine. So here, it's a harf al-jar ism majroor and a maf'ul mutlaq. There's no mubtada and khabar. Bil walidain is connected to an omitted verb. Ihsana is also connected to an omitted verb. So it actually centers around an omitted verb. And so this is actually a jumla fi'li, but the fi'l is omitted. Say again. Yes, but now remember, we don't call something a maf'ulun bihi unless it's a direct object. If a harful jar comes there, then we call it the ismul majroor. Right? So let's not get too carried away with that. All that I'm just saying is that we see a nasb, there's no verb around. We understand that that word is coming in the replacement of the verb. Don't worry still about categorizing the sentence, not for now. When we come across a new context, and we'll see more of it. To be honest with you, I don't know. I haven't found a replacement yet. Question?
Why would Allah use a maf'ul mutlaq instead of a masdar instead of a verb? What is there a reason?
Good rhetorical. I mean, that has to do with rhetoric. And remember, we spoke about the idea of a noun versus a verb. That, I mean, we would have spoken about this in the very first lesson in Nahwu last year, in first year. What is the definition of a noun? It's a word that conveys a complete meaning that is not time-bound. And a fi'al, a word that conveys a complete meaning, but it is time-bound. And a harf, a word that does not convey a complete meaning. So now we ask the question, why would Allah use a word that convey, both of them, ism and fi'al, convey a complete meaning? Why use the one that is not time-bound as opposed to the one that is time-bound? Right? And I think in that we get something of the answer. Is that it's as if there's a degree of a rhetorical emphasis in that. It's as if you should always be being good to your parents. It should have been that you were good, you will be good, you are being good, you must be good. It encompasses all of that. Right? So in using a noun as opposed to a verb, it removes the time-boundedness of the meaning. So that's why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would use the one in replacement of the other. For purposes of rhetoric of balagha. Right? Okay, next. وَقَالُوا اتَّخَذَ اللَّهُ وَلَدًا سُبْحَانَهُ. Again, the sentence here is actually subhanah. I put the first part of the previous sentence, وَقَالُوا اتَّخَذَ اللَّهُ وَلَدًا, to give you context. But the sentence we have is actually subhanah. That's the whole sentence. What does it comprise of? A masdar in nasb, subhana, and who? Mudaf ilayh. So what do I understand is, can a word in nasb be a whole sentence? No. So what's happening here? You must know, because this is the concept we're learning. Sometimes we have a masdar in nasb, a maf'ul mutlaq, that's there in replacement of the verb. In place of the verb. So subhana means it's basically in replacement of the verb. Usabbihuhu subhana. I proclaim his perfection. الذين آتيناهم الكتاب يتلونه حق تلاوته. This one here was the sifa of the masdar, but it comes in the form of a mudaf ilayh. Right? Sometimes I can use mudaf ilayh to convey a meaning of a mawsul sifa. Right? A proper recitation. When I translate it into English, proper recitation sounds very much like a mawsul sifa, isn't it? So sometimes in Arabic I can use a mudaf ilayh to convey the meaning of a mawsul sifa. And in that case, that mudaf can also be the, I can consider it the maf'ul mutlaq. What tells me that I consider it the maf'ul mutlaq? The fact that it is just telling me something more about the masdar. You see, the masdar is the tilawa, same root letters yatluna. Root letter is the same. This thing is just telling me more about it. That's how I know I call that thing the maf'ul mutlaq. Again, in replacement of the verb sibghatallah. Word in nasb at the beginning of the sentence, nothing else in there. Mudafun ilayh can't be a complete sentence unless I understand something to be omitted. Right? And yeah, I understand this verb is coming in replacement of the, this masdar is coming in replacement of the verb. Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu ittaqullaha haqqa tuqatihi. 3 is the same, 5 is the same like 3. Ittaqu tuqa. I see the masdar there. But then there's a mudaf connected to it. What is that mudaf doing? That mudaf ilayh. Haqqa tuqati, again, proper fear. It's a mudaf ilayh in form, but in meaning it's just describing it. So the description of the masdar can also be considered the maf'ul mutlaq. Remember, we only give the name to the first part of the mudaf, to the mudaf. Because a word being mudaf doesn't put it into any hal. But a word being mudafun ilayh has to be in jar. Isn't that the definition of mudafun ilayh? You have a light word and then a word in jar. But mudaf can be in any hal. So we just call the first part of it the maf'ul mutlaq. Okay? But it's not a complete, translation. I'll look into that, but I don't think that's a complete equivalent. Next one. وَلَا يُظْلَمُونَ فَتِيلًا. وَلَا يُظْلَمُونَ فَتِيلًا. Now here is again something omitted. Right? What I want to do is show you how to identify that there's something omitted. What does it mean? What does the sentence mean? وَلَا يُظْلَمُونَ فَتِيلًا. Fatila, what does that mean? It's the skin of the diaper. So in this context, fatila just means even in the slightest bit, a minute amount, right? Now, what we actually understand in Arabic is وَلَا يُظْلَمُونَ ظُلْمًا فَتِيلًا. They will not be wronged even the slightest harm. They will not be dealt an oppression, even the slightest oppression. Right? So, they will not be wronged. You can't say they will not be wronged a thread on the back of a diaper. What is that actually? What does that mean? What the thread on the back of a diaper is not a dhulm. So you can't be wrong with it. So they will not be wronged. وَلَا يُظْلَمُونَ ظُلْمًا فَتِيلًا. That word dhulman is omitted. No. So now the word describing, so what is omitted? Dhulman is omitted. Dhulman is omitted, right? And fatila is actually the description for dhulman. So what we do is we just call that description the maf'ul mutlaq. The masdar is missing, but the description of that masdar is there. Like if I had to write it out actually, وَلَا يُظْلَمُونَ ظُلْمًا فَتِيلًا, then you would have told me this is maf'ul mutlaq. The word dhulman is maf'ul mutlaq. And the word the word fatilan is the sifa for that maf'ul mutlaq. And because I have the maf'ul mutlaq with the sifa, it comes to clarify the type, mubayyinun lin-naw. Right? But here what's happening is that word is omitted. So I just call it, instead of calling this the sifa of the maf'ul mutlaq, I just call it the maf'ul mutlaq. Yeah. I think must you abandon maf'ul mutlaq for now. Okay, look. Let's just see, the next one is easy. وَيُرِيدُ الشَّيْطَانُ أَن يُضِلَّهُمْ ضَلَالًا بَعِيدًا. Allah. The problem is that's actually not as straightforward as you think. Why? What? Because the word the verb is al-dalla yudillu. What's the master of al-dalla yudillu? You're going to learn it next week in the fourth bab, inshallah. It's idlal. Idlalan. But here we don't have idlalan, we have dalalan. Right? So that's what we call ismul master. Right? But don't bother yourself with it. Just see it as the same root letters. Same root letters, fine, go with it. We just leave that for now. That's another noun taking the place of a master. So it's a description here, right? Okay. That's the master of the first part.
So that's what, because this is a master.
It is a master, but it's not the master of the verb we're dealing with.
But that's not necessarily have to be the master of the actual.
Yeah, it must be. No, it must be.
No, but like even the basic example.
I gave you one like this as well.
Oh, okay.
Don't bother yourself with it. Just see a verb there and see the thing with the same root letters afterwards. Same thing. Yeah. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. All I wanted to identify is this. You see a verb, yudillu, yudilla. You see a word in nasb after the same root letters. Just go with it. Right. Just go with it. Huh? Look, I'm not gonna lie. When I read Nahwu books, then I'm still learning stuff. And I can guarantee you 100%. If I go read another Nahwu book from another madhab in Nahwu, then I'm gonna learn other stuff that I never even heard of before. So maybe it's good to know that, okay, we don't know so much. So we don't arrogate to ourselves the right to just make interpretation of the Quran as we willy-nilly. But don't worry. Are you telling me or you're asking me? Usually, the rule is it must be the master of that verb. For now, what I'm saying is don't worry about the technicality of it. If I'm going to unpack it for you more, it's going to make it more confusing. Right? Like I told you last week, there's 12 things that can come in place of the master. So now, unless I'm going to go through those 12 things, then I say rather don't bother yourself with it. Right? Don't bother yourself with it. Why? Why do I say don't bother yourself with it? Because it's not going to drastically affect your understanding. When we come across it in the Quran, then I'll point it out to you. Then I'll tell you, look, this is what's happening over here. And that's another form that the Maf'ul Mutlaq can take in. You can nicely have your Maf'ul Mutlaq page and you go add it to them. Right? But for now, just what I wanted to see is, okay, right? In terms of Maf'ul Mutlaq. I have a verb. It's followed by a word in nasb that has the same root letters. Right? I'm not even going to tell you some other master, just it has the same root letters. Right? Maf'ul Mutlaq. comes for three reasons. Sometimes for emphasis if it's alone, sometimes to clarify type if it has a sifa, sometimes to clarify number if it's described with a number. Right? Additional thing to note, sometimes the maf'ul mutlaq comes alone without the verb in place of the verb. Right? I think that's enough. So this is the thing. That's a sifa for dalala. فلا تميلوا كل الميل. Can you see the tamilu and al-mail? So you know there's something like that happening. You don't have to know exactly what's happening for now. It's something like that happening. Leave وعد الله حقا. That's gonna. فمن أظلم ممن افترى على الله كذبا. And then okay, this one I can give you. Right? Iftara means what? It means to make up something. Right? Something that's not. It's not the reality. So, and kadhib, a lie. That's something that's made up as well. It's something that is mukhalifun lil waqi'. It's against the reality. It's not in accordance with the reality, right? So, like we had before, in our basic examples, you can have a masdar with different root letters, but has the same meaning. Remember that? You can have a word, a masdar with different root letters, but the same meaning. Right? And I just give another example that we did in our basic examples of that. Okay, I didn't put it here actually. I didn't put it here, but I did mention it the last time. ما نعبدهم إلا ليقربونا إلى الله زلفى. يقربونا means to bring close. Zulfa means closeness as well. Right? There's different root letter, but the same meaning. So it can be like that as well. Okay. Look, forgive me. This is the first time that I'm teaching like Nahwu. At the Mullah Khalil told me like advanced Nahwu, but forgive me, it's the first time I'm doing that. So, you know, a way to just cut out the detail. I'm still going, inshallah. But don't worry about it. Listen, we're not doing that. We're not doing that.